It will be as if you, Irving B., never even existed.
Like you never existed! That's enough!
This video may contain spoilers. Hello and welcome to Fast Not Good, where we make videos fast and not good. This will be our last video from France. We'll bring a mic next time we go travelling. This is video 3 of probably 5, examining the theme of death in Severance. We're unpacking how the show creates a thanatophobic atmosphere by not letting characters truly die. We've explored how this thanatophobic theme raises questions about Gemma and Petey. This video will be about Irving's character arc, how faith and loss radicalised him to rebellion against Lumon, and how his rebellious action was quashed along with, apparently, his entire innie selfhood. But how gone is he, really? First, an umbrella question. Can people really leave Lumon? I can see 5 ways out. First, actually dying. Second, quitting. But Cobell still has Petey's chip, and Ragabi's on the run, so it doesn't look like Lumon likes it when people go. Third, being fired, which has been demonstrably ineffective and impermanent in all the cases we've seen.
We'd like to offer you a promotion.
Fourth, retiring. In all of the both examples we've seen, half of those retirements are impermanent. Fifth, being obliterated from existence, purged from memory, excised from the record. Dramatic. I doubt Irv's really gone. The ending of episode 4, though, is as close as Lumon can get to a public execution. How did the sweet, gentle, faithful Irving from early season 1 become the martyr of season 2?
Section the first!
Faith. In season 1, Irving is pious. He is faithful, obedient, and actively espouses the gospel of Kier. The eager, unprovoked way he quotes the handbook and the diligent focus with which he approaches his work demonstrates his identity foreclosure. He commits himself fully to the identity of good Lumon MDR employee.
Something about me is that I know all 9 core Lumon principles.
And he's had a lot of time to refine this identity. He's been in MDR for 3 years, making him the longest-standing member of the team. In those 3 years, Irving grew professionally capable with the numbers, sure, but it also gave him time to immerse himself into the company culture, rhetoric, and faith system. He's presumably 3 years removed from his last contact with his outie self, his orientation video, his sense of before time. He's porous to the Lumon propaganda of the present, and he's probably aware of an ongoing after time. He would have seen at least one person leave. Irving's got his position figured out on the severed floor, and has cultivated a strong faith in the structures provided by Lumon and its doctrines. When Carol D left, and if Anonymous left to make room for Mark, it's plausible that retirement parties like Burt's were held. Before the events of season 1, these staff changes were Irving's only experiences with people leaving. The selective verbiage applied at Burt's retirement deters any interpretation of leaving as a form of death. After all, death doesn't happen here. There's an encouragement of the survival instinct in how Lumon faith frames leaving as a non-ending, in the notion that the innies will live on, in some form, through their outies. This structure eradicates any need for a vision of a spiritual afterlife. Instead of the finality of burying the body with food, weapons, and significant personal items, as humanity has done for at least the last 40,000 years, it's feasible, though not shown, that innies walk themselves over the threshold and emerge into the light with a souvenir pen in a tote bag. Severed employees have no need for belief in a spiritual dimension, because the evidence-based and concretely provable belief in their outies fulfills that function. Outies existed before, and will exist after. Anyway, there have been 2 staff swap-outs in Irving's 3 years with MDR. That's an uneventful staff changeover rate. As a result, it's likely that Irving's perception of time passing is pretty warped.
It's like I feel like I'm trapped in a loop, like I'm unstuck in time.
Well, I think cutting out gluten is the smartest solution.
Fine.
Days are only marked by elevator blips. There's little sense of social time passing, because social time stays mostly static. Clifford Geertz theorised that losing people is important to individuals' understanding of social time. Time's passage is marked by the disappearance of concrete persons. Irving has, in 3 years, experienced 2 markers of social time, and a hugely deprived temporality in other ways. Days are just elevator blips. Circadian markers, like waking up routines, evening routines, sleep itself, the sun, are unavailable for innies. Perhaps there is a hunger at lunchtime informed by circadian rhythm, but otherwise the internal clock for innies is skewed on both the 24-hour and longer-term scales. It appears that Irving has filled this 3-year stretch of innie time by engaging deeply with Lumon lore, poring over the handbook, memorising it, absorbing it, internalising it. Then Petey left and Helena arrived. Shifting the staff around so suddenly rippled Irving's social pool in an unexpected way.
Oh,
This change is, at most, the third marker of social time that Irving has ever experienced. A nasty disruption to his familiar social context. An unpleasant lesson in change, unpredictability, and impermanence. A test of faith. Irving's wellness session may have been provided to remind Irving of his higher self. Literally higher self, like the Irving who lives above ground. Cobell, genius that she is, perhaps suggested the content of this session, during which Miss Casey soothes Irving's distress with calm, vague affirmations about his outie. His outie has, in the 3 years since his orientation video, become sufficiently distant and othered as to feel like a spiritual higher self from whom Irving may draw additional strength and comfort during the changeover. There's also the oxytocin spike from meeting Burt. So, reconnected with his faith, abstractly through contemplating his spiritual above self, materially in this demonstration of Lumon's attentive care, and hormonally because crushes make everything feel good, Irving suggests bringing Helly to the perpetuity wing.
That place is everything.
We'll be coming back to the perpetuity wing in excruciating detail in the final video of this series, but effectively Irving is trying to inspire Helly to embrace the faith, trust, and sense of purpose that's guided his whole existence for the last 3 years. Recognising Helly's hesitancy around the work, Irving attempts to welcome Helly into the folds of faith, and expects her to react to the perpetuity wing with the same reverential awe that he did. He tries to share the good feelings from his faith.
My point is you're part of a history now.
A noble one.
And that's so much more.
Irving believes in the goodness of the job. There's a cognitive feedback cycle of absorbing a belief, interpreting that belief under a self-favouring lens, uncritically absorbing favourable evidence, and using those beliefs to justify actions. Irving strives to be the idealised worker that Kier described in the handbooks. But Burt just keeps being irresistible. Love and loss. Irving's good feelings from his faith in his work were superseded by the sparkling chemistry he has with Burt. After 3 years of amicable but superficial professional relationships, with his desire for connection satisfied mostly by faith in Kier and the company, this genuine bond between like-minded peers, bonding over faith and art, changed everything. Irving misbehaved a little, going for visits, little walks together, secret meetings under damp, eyeless foliage.
These are my ferns.
Free time that had been applied to studying the Kier text was repurposed to sketch Burt.
My numbers went down, but I didn't even care.
With all his pious practice adoring Kier and the company, Irving was primed to love another person, deeply, but was limited by scriptures advising against romantic relationships between colleagues. It's all a bit new, and he's a bit scared.
I'm just not ready.
But he wants to explore this further. He trusts that there will be time. And then there isn't. Burt doesn't seem happy about retiring either. There's a difference between a conceptual prediction of how an event will feel and the actuality of the experience when it happens. Milchick hosts the retirement party. These are essential for recognising the retirees' contributions, offering a space for reflection and celebration, and reinforcing social connections. But leaving the severed floor signifies a much deeper shift. The person who occupied that space ceases to exist until or unless the chip is reactivated. The retirement party therefore doubles as a funeral wake. It just happens to be a wake that the deceased must attend themselves. Burt stands, present and powerless, on the boundary between existence and non-existence. He's still there to witness the beginning of his shift into the memories of others, rendered a ghost before he's actually gone. Milchick guides the ceremony with cheerful fondness. Irving recognises the ceremony as a hollow spectacle, crafted to disallow any reactions of pain, grief, or loss. For Irving as well as Burt, there's a difference between a conceptual prediction of how an event will feel and the actuality of the experience when it happens. The ceremony is punctuated by a visit from Burt's above self, a person who he wouldn't have seen since his orientation video 7 years before. Outies are both creators and destroyers, unreachable beings to thank or curse for the innies' severed lives. Outies were around before the innies, and outies will continue after. There is no need for a spiritual afterlife. The physical outie will reabsorb the innie back, more or less, into the cerebral maw from which they were generated. For those at peace with this perspective, Irving's outburst would indeed look disproportionate.
Irving, what?
Kier texts and Lumen faith ideologies teach that death isn't a firm ending, and that immortality is achieved through the devoted remembrance of those who survive. We'll be coming back to this in a future video. A person following in Kier's footsteps should be at peace with mortality. It's therefore un-Eagan to feel upset. Innies are presumably aware that their existence is fixed term, aware that, all being well, they will work until retirement age, and then stop. Irving, whose perception of time was, as we discussed, smudged by the blurry temporality of the severed floor, anticipated that he'd have the remainder of his fixed-term existence to develop his relationship with Burt. But that was ripped away. The construction of his future was ripped away. It's not just the pain of Burt going, it's also the pain of losing the possibility of becoming a securely loving and loved version of himself. Reminder, severance chips stay in. Death on the severed floor isn't subject to the whims of circumstance like it is on the surface. Retirement death is deliberate and pre-decided, adding a greater sense of injustice and an active direction for the anger experienced in grief. The chips stay in, so Burt could come back, but Irving doesn't know that. So Irving gets angry. Angry at Milchick, at Lumon, at innie Burt, outie Burt, the O&D staff, severed existence in general. Irving is disillusioned against the ensnaring hold of Lumen indoctrination and radicalized.
Let's burn this place to the ground.
Our interiors feel empty or anguished, our lives valueless, when we see the inevitable pettinesses of the world expressed through the human beings in it. We see that our gods have clay feet, and so we must hack away at them in order to save ourselves, to deflate the unreal overinvestment that we have made in them in order to secure our own apotheosis. Burt's honest care and affection revealed, by contrast, the shallowness of care that Irving received from Lumen and the untruths in the texts which he had previously held sacred. His gods are false, the teachings unsatisfying. The real gods who made and rearranged the world he inhabits are the outies and Lumen. Irving's crisis of faith propels him to deicide. It also crystallizes Irving's view of outies as others, willfully complicit in, yet unaccountable for, the injustices on the severed floor.
Section the thought.
Rebellion. Poor Irv. He watched as his first love was cheerfully killed in a room full of smiling people. When the OTC activated and he had the opportunity to see Burt again, the scenario on the outside would have felt like infidelity. So Irv begins Season 2 with a clear escalation of seriousness and self-destructive intent.
If he's gone, and I'm gone,
Stop saying that.
then somehow we'll be together.
Whoa. Irving has made an afterlife. Innie Irving has made a spiritual afterlife. The Eagan doctrines don't explore this avenue of faith. In most cases, folks leaving Lumen are leaving with the knowledge that a material, physical, outie life will continue. But Irving's faith in an ideal condition, a state of loving and being loved, fuels the speculative hope for a spiritual afterlife for their innie selves. Dylan talks him down from this tipping point, and Irving finds consolation with Felicia. The joy and comfort that Irving finds through reminiscing with Felicia show a much healthier grieving process than outie Mark's bitter reticence over Gemma. But Burt is still gone, and Irving is still adrift, becoming increasingly alienated from his MDR peers. Bereft of the faith that had previously sustained his sense of purpose, Irving finds a new purpose in unravelling Lumen entirely, starting with a search for the subject of his paintings. Any consolation through his friendship with Dylan quickly evaporates. Dylan, the reason Irving's still there, refuses to help with this purpose. Irving also grows suspicious of Helly and, by association, Mark. So, carrying grief, fury, and betrayal, Irving enters episode 4 alone with the weight of his dead gods. There is a lot to unpack in episode 4. Comment below if you'd like a video about the Ortbo, the doubles, the purpose of the trip, but this is about Irving right now. On the trip, he's tempted by his faith. Like someone raised religious who grows to resent the institution but holds love for God and on some level wants to keep believing. His desire to believe is challenged by the omission of his double as a guiding signpost. The others all see themselves represented on the journey, but Irving only sees his double upon arriving at the destination. Even before the climactic action, he is already being wiped from the story. He wants to engage with the revelation that Kier had a twin. He wants to return to the safe embrace of Lumen mythos. but it seems more of a struggle now to find the teachings persuasive. Season 1 Irving would have been the first to examine Appendix 4, would have held it and protected it over the perilous terrain, would have been nourished by awe at the waterfall.
We're starving, Mr. Milchick.
Now, halfway through Season 2, Irving is trying to reconcile his taught love of Kier with his true love for Burt. His faith has been redirected towards a loving afterlife with Burt, and Irving doesn't believe in Lumon anymore.
We should eat it.
We don't know what this is. We don't know anything.
Irving is also the most handbook literate of the MDR team. His suspicion around this new tome may indicate that something is amiss with Appendix 4. Artistically perceptive Irving would recognise the true word of Kier. He knows the writing style better than anyone there. But the new appendix, though almost convincing, feels wrong. Feels non-canonical. More like something Rick and Hale was commissioned to create. These words, falsely attributed to a figure who Irving still holds somewhat sacred, fuel the fatal blow to his faith in Lumon. The company has strayed irreconcilably from the grandfather's original teachings. That evening, Innie Irving finally gets some dang sleep. A vision revealed to him in a dream provides a tangible theory onto which he can attach his suspicions about Helly. Irving's realization that Helly is not just an outie, but an Eagan, mobilizes Irving to action. He still holds some affection for the religion that sustained him for the past 3 years, a religion in which probity is forefronted as a core guiding principle. There are layers to Helena's betrayal. She's an outie among innies. She was cruel at the campfire, acting without benevolence. She's an Eagan, behaving falsely, acting without probity. Her Eagan status adds insult to injury. Any trust in the integrity of the Eagan bloodline is obliterated by Helena's manipulation. She is the manifestation of the corrupt church that Irving has come to despise. Innie Irving has been more apathetic about his existence this season. His worldview and his faith shattered when Burt was taken from him. So, when an opportunity to follow his purpose, the purpose of unravelling Lumon, presented itself, Irving did what he needed to do. Milchick's condemnation is damning, as the Lumon-Eagan key to immortality is remembrance. Performing this condemnation publicly, under the gaze of the whole department, creates another spectacle. A spectacle in which Milchick is judge, jury, and executioner, destroying the convict in full view of the crowd. Milchick makes an example of Irving.
Your workspace will be cleared and any personal items discarded. Your file, including any and all professional interactions and personal relations, will be purged and destroyed. It will be as if you, Irving B., never even existed.
Michel Foucault's influential book, Discipline and Punish, opens with a graphic description of the public torture and execution sentenced to a citizen accused of attempted regicide. The thesis of the rest of the text investigates how the site of punishment has moved, from the grandiose public spectacle of bodily punishment to the concealed punitive measures imposed on the soul behind prison doors. Arguably, the severed floor is already a form of prison, and here we see Milchick propel the site of punishment from Irving's soul to Irving's whole existence. Irving has had the last few episodes to come to terms with his own death, and he does seem at peace with it. He comforts his colleagues. He martyrs himself for a cause, satisfied with the truth that his actions have revealed, and walks into obliteration with optimism for a loved and loving afterlife. He could still come back, though. Thanks for watching. New videos when we feel like it. We're still in France. Bye.